Ben Currie. I've set the timer. We have 20 minutes and you are my first official guest on the Bearded IFA podcast. So welcome. And for our viewers tuning in for the first time, give me a quick bio. Who are you?
Well, I'm Ben Currie. I'm originally from Australia. I've been living in North Wales for the best part of 12 years now. This is my home. I race motorcycles professionally in the UK. I'm currently riding for McCann's Yamaha in the British Supersport Championship. And yeah, I'm born in Germany, moved to Australia when I was 2 years old. And yeah, now I'm back over in the UK trying to chase a dream.
Amazing. That is a way better CV than mine.
Well,
go on then. Let's rewind then. How do you get into bikes? How do you ride bikes for a living? Where does that begin?
I guess like anything you do in the world, it starts off with a passion and just a bit of fun, really. And yeah, my mum, my dad, we lived in a cul-de-sac. We call it a court in Australia, in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne. And I got a motorbike for Christmas once, a joint with a couple of neighbours with kids my age, and some of my best friends still to this day. And we'd go to the local quarry and ride motorbikes, and basically just ended up joining the local club. And one thing led to another, and a little bit of talent, a little bit of ambition later, and we climbed through the ranks in Australia and ended up over here, and more or less spent majority of my career over here since I'm 17 years old.
How did you end up in North Wales then from Australia? Apart from it being the centre of the universe, but I am biased. How do you end up here?
Originally, I was destined for Chesterfield, England, and that's where I was actually based for like the first 2 weeks. Unfortunately, a long story. We could do a 3-hour podcast on it. I have done it before and talked about my past when I first got here in the UK. It was a wild ride, and some plans didn't go to plan, let's say, and I ended up coming over here for some temporary living arrangements and never left.
Amazing. That's the power of North Wales.
Yeah.
So you get into bikes, you start getting good, go professional. When did that happen?
I mean, I've been faking a profession since I got here, really, at 17.
I didn't want to say anything.
When I moved over here, I had only one intention, and that was to race my motorbike. And yeah, nothing else really mattered at the time, especially at 17 years old. I just wanted to. I had this opportunity to come over here, luckily enough, and I thought I'm just going to put everything into it. And yeah, I dabbled in and out of different part-time roles, jobs, if you like, as a young fella, and just had zero interest for it all. Basically, exactly like when I was a kid, for school and doing all those normal things. I just had zero sort of desire to do any of that boring, slow stuff. I just wanted to race my motorbike and do fun stuff. So yeah, it's really started to ramp up my career, I would say, since probably 2018, when I come close to winning my first British title. And yeah, I would say from that point I started to earn a living from racing, very much a small living, but I could survive. So I would say that would class as probably really turning it into a profession.
Yeah, ace. I think I know the high point. What's been the high point so far as a rider? There's
been so many high points, but I think as well, when I clinched the British Championship in 2023, came over here in 2013. Exactly 10 years later, I became British champion. It took 10 years to, I was close a lot of times, and then obviously that was a massive high point, and came at a time in my career where I was on the brink of finishing because of what had happened the year before. To go from the World Championship scene to finally making it into the World Championship level, for my sort of, having nearly a career-ending injury and sort of all my dreams shattering into pieces. The very following year was like a huge redemption story and a real big comeback, being given a lifeline by Ducati and Moto Rapido to sort of show my potential. To clinch that title meant so much more than just the British Championship.
Yeah, it was sort of, I suppose, that validation in yourself and your abilities, isn't it? That you go through all that and you get a title.
Yeah, I guess I've heard this saying a couple of times where it was I'm a 10-year overnight success. It's like, it took me 10 years to be an overnight success, and that just sort of, that is just basically my fuel, that the journey never stops. I worked my butt off, and I couldn't see anything past that moment in my career because I was so fixated on just winning that title, becoming British champion. And I remember the very next day waking up after, the title celebrations down at Brands Hatch and thinking, shit, I've got to back it up. Time to get back to work. And the grind starts again. Literally, it's you don't have a minute to sit there and think, oh, we did it. Because, yeah, that's one thing. That's one massive lesson that I got from it, that it's like, it's not always the destination. I know it's cliche. It's not always destination. It's the journey, but it genuinely is.
You're only as good as your last ride.
100%.
You touched on a point, and it was one of the main questions I wanted to ask, actually. Your injury, coming off the bike, getting really hurt. How do you overcome that? How do you get back on a bike when that's happened to you? And, for the viewers listening, just quickly recap what happened.
Yeah, so I got my dream opportunity to race in the World Championship. I was riding for an Italian team and moved out of the British Championship into World Championship racing, and went over to Spain. It was pre-season in Barcelona. I was doing some pre-season training, and like every rider is, putting the hours in on the bike and training over there in somewhat of a warm climate for sort of January, February time. And unfortunately, I just had a judgment error and made a mistake, and found myself laying on the ground with a separated spine. At the time, I didn't know that, but I was in trouble. I was in a lot of trouble, and very, very lucky to say the least. And I was given a second chance. Let's just say that. A couple of weeks in traction in Barcelona hospital. Got an amazing care out there, and got rebuilt, rotted back up, and stabilised, and set back on the Ryanair flight back to the UK to start rehabilitation. And that was a whirlwind. But I mean, 3 months, literally 12 weeks later, I was lining up for my first ever World Championship race, which is quite hard to believe, actually, that I achieved that. And I remember going to Portugal for my first race in Estoril with the best riders in the world, and I was crapping myself, and I rolled out onto the first free practice session, and I remember Domi Agata, the world champion, come and pass me on what was his probably second or third lap of practice session there. And at that moment, I thought, I am not in the right place. This is not the thing to be doing. And I was so far away from my ability and their ability, and I was like a fish out of water. And it was a massive roller coaster and journey from sort of the time I got injured to, getting back to full fitness.
Shows a lot of resilience, though, Ben, to go through that and to get back on it and then end up, winning. And last season was good, wasn't it? As the season goes, this season looking good.
Yeah, I mean,
on a new bike.
Yeah, I'm riding for Yamaha now, so that's really exciting. And the last few years we've just missed out on 3 British titles, basically. I mean, we won in 23. We come very close.
I was going to say, it's come to the line, hasn't it?
Oh, it's to the line every time.
You've not been far from it at all.
There are a few points. Yeah. Last year I lost by 4 points, came down to the last race. I won the last race, but unfortunately my competitor did just enough to stay in front of me. Colossal battle, but in you saying about the resilience, I think, I've learnt so much in my small career about resilience and drive to, not dwell on the negatives, not get yourself down. And I think it's come from, actually, I'm so blessed that my mum and my dad allowed me to come over here as a 17-year-old on my own and sort of find my way. And I think that's what it is. It's survival skills. It's like coming over here with no backup, sort of no real education, no nothing. And that's a choice that I made as a kid. in hindsight, probably not the right choice, but it's paying off in the sense that I get to live my dream every day, work towards the goals that I want to work towards. And yeah, I guess not having a backup plan builds resilience, because it's like you just got to keep going no matter what. And, laying in hospital, there was doubts for sure about coming back racing because it hurt. And you will have an element of doubt because it bloody hurts when it goes wrong. But now I'm here and I'm doing this, and I can't even, that's a long distant memory. You quickly forget about that. And yeah, I sort of just carry that motto right through my life with whatever I'm doing on and off the track.
Yeah, I think really key attributes for anyone in business as well, actually, being resilient and taking those hits and keep going, having that drive, having that belief, I think is so important in business, because stuff will be sent to challenge you in one way or another. I suppose it leads on to my next point, really, and I know this is something that we've discussed over the years in terms of financial planning, which is, you've come close to it there, having a severed spine is not something that, is a bump, as it were. It could be serious, it could be life-ending, couldn't it? Or career-ending, and that's my point. If you are a professional sports person, there's always that risk, isn't there, that you could get that injury that calls time on that profession, on that career. So we've spent some time thinking about what does the career look like outside of sports. You just sort of talk to me about that a little bit, what's gone through your mind and why you think, I know why I think it's important, but why you think it's important to start building that plan, because I'm sure there'll be other sports people and professionals out there that are just focusing on what they do at the moment and maybe not thinking about, well, what if this ends? What if this changes?
Yeah, I think there's different stages in business, isn't there, in general, and life. And, there's obviously got to become I think there's distinct different stages in business and life. And I think it's absolutely paramount that you do something for the love of doing something and not doing it for financial gain or to get something quick out of it, because ultimately there will be rough roads in business, in sport, whatever it is. In this case, business, there'll be tough times, and you'll soon be found out if you don't do it for the passion and love and drive. Success is almost like a byproduct of passion and hard work and resilience and turning up every single day, time and time again, no matter what happens. And I think, I got to a point in my career where, we steadied the ship and things were all right. Things are going good, off the back of the success in 2023. Before that, like I said, I was here at 2013. That's 10 years into it, and I didn't have anything to my name. I had some good race results and I had some credibility in the sport, but that didn't pay the mortgage. So once I won that British Championship, things sort of got all right. And it was at that moment when I bought my first house, because I was like, right, I've got to buy a house, because now I can actually buy a house because I have this nice little bonus that came into my bank account. I've got to buy one now. Otherwise I might not ever be able to afford one. And then it was that step. So you got to do things that are potentially going to, in the future-proof your career. And that was when I thought, you know what, I need to sit down with you and talk about pensions. I need to talk about all the things that come, after racing.
All the grown-up stuff.
All the grown-up stuff that people don't realise, when they're in employment, how fortunate they are to have all them things taken care of. But when you're self-employed, or in my case, just sort of going day by day, you're never ever thinking about that time, that rainy day when things change. So you think your career's long until it's not, and like you say, it could be over in a heartbeat. So we've been doing some things. You've educated me a great deal about all sorts of different things like stocks and shares, ISAs, like I said, pensions and what have you. We just set up a little bit of a sort of a plan of attack over the next few years, because you can really chip away at it quickly and get yourself ahead. And I feel like what that has done for me massively has taken the pressure off just a little bit and eased the pressure, which has actually created a little bit more of the option to take risk in business, because I know I've got that there. If everything goes P-tong, I know I've got that little pot there that's building up and being looked after by the correct people to bail me out if I ever need it. And obviously we never do anything with the intention to blow up our life savings, but it does help you make good decisions, I believe, and maybe edge on the side of risk, rather than safety. And we all know, like my game, business owners know, sometimes, no risk, no reward. But obviously calculated risk is the number one. And I feel like that has helped me in my life so much.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good to hear, Ben, because taking risks doesn't have to be a gamble as long as it's calculated.
It's a massive
difference, isn't it?
Massive difference.
And I think it's important to start early, have a plan, revisit that plan, and keep reviewing it. Obviously, I'm biased. I run a financial planning firm. Of course, I'm going to say that, but I think it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And I think what you've been really good at, though, is diversification, because you're looking at different avenues and different things all the time. One case being an example with the social media, because what people might not realise as a rider, even doing it at the high level that you do, there's not loads of checks being thrown about and loads of funding, is there? As a rider, you're responsible for getting a lot of that funding yourself and to work with sponsors. And I think that's what you've done really well with the social media side, with the YouTube channel that you've got, and also with the networking that you're trying to create within business, which I'm really passionate about. So touch on that, Ben, really, the sort of the networking, and maybe there's a greater synergy to be had between sports and networking and businesses.
Yeah, to be honest with you, one thing I actually quite like a lot in the world is helping people. Whatever that is, I could offer somebody. I'd love to help if I can, and I think if I could give any advice to specifically motorcycle riders in this case, but I guess it works in sport in general. There's a lot of sports out there that aren't mainstream, in the sense of, we would have 50, 60,000 people turn up on a race weekend, which is kind of massive when you think about it. But, in terms of football, that seismic scale difference of football sort of wages, compared to someone like me, that what we're earning, there would be a ton of, general normal jobs that get paid more than what I get paid, to race a motorbike, and I'm essentially risking my life. So diversification is absolutely paramount, and I think building skills outside of your racing. A lot of motorcycle riders, and like I said, early days when I first came over here, I was very much like, no plan B, we're racing motorbikes. You need a plan B, but you don't need to take away from the actual sport itself and racing. And actually, it helps if you put yourself into something outside and you develop some skills, and like you said, for the passion and love of it. So for instance, I've just started a YouTube channel, which I've wanted to do for so many years. And I've invested in a videographer, and he's, managing things. We're building a little bit of a platform, and we're building a brand, that hopefully one day I can, do some, dream stuff that I've wanted to do and build that. But then that also adds value to my current sponsorship portfolio. So people used to give me money for logos on helmets and riding clothing, whatever it is. Many different forms of sponsorship, but just for example, now I can offer them this other angle. So it strengthens what I'm actually doing. So I think if I could give any advice to anybody in business / sports people, sports athletes, is diversify the way that you can potentially earn income by strengthening your number one asset, because that adds value in different ways, but also doesn't put all your eggs in one basket. So one day when I'm finished racing my motorcycle, or I can no longer compete at a high level, shall we say, when the young guys start coming through and whipping our butts, I'll move over to the online form of entertainment, not so much racing, but, maybe I can entertain people on YouTube and also teach people a thing or two on how to go quite fast. So that's my motto. I want it to last forever, and how can I do that? Well, that's one way. So yeah,
amazing.
That's kind of my philosophy.
That is perfect, Ben. And we've hit the 20 minutes. So thank you so much for your time. We'll make sure we put your YouTube channel in the links because it is great. The behind the scenes stuff I find really interesting. For example, taking the bike from being a bike to race ready. Love all of that. So we'll put the links out there. So yeah, thanks again, Ben.
Thanks, Rob.